A conference interpreter interprets from foreign languages into his or her mother tongue at international conferences where multilingual communication takes place. Every day, thousands of interpreters interact between different languages, facilitating communication and thus contributing to global commitment of international organizations all over the world. The range of career opportunities is wide and matches different interests and aspirations. The main selection criterion is based on a language combination and a field of specialization. The recruitment procedures vary from organization to organization. Usually, in order to work as a staff interpreter, a candidate has to sit an open competition. Who prefers a career as a freelance interpreter should apply for an accreditation test. The requirements are very stringent and concern not only the working languages and interpreting skills, but also the educational qualifications and professional experience. The European Union employs the largest number of interpreters in the world, about 1,040 staff interpreters and 5,850 freelancers work for the interpretation services of the European Commission, the European Parliament and the Court of Justice, that together cover the interpreting needs of all EU bodies, providing about 145,000 interpreter days per year. The European Union is the only organization that has established the full equality of its members also from the language point of view. As a result, the interpretation is offered in 23 official languages, and in some cases even in regional languages of different member states and in other languages of international importance, such as Russian, Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, etc. The EU institutions seem to have relatively low barriers to career entry, as a candidate in possess of a first-level degree in conference interpreting could already have some job opportunities. Moreover, the European Union employs also novice interpreters if their qualifications and language combinations are particularly relevant to the organization. For instance, Giancarlo Zucchetto, head of the Italian Interpreter Unit at the European Parliament, has stressed that English, French and Spanish are sufficiently covered in the Italian booth. So currently preference is given to language combinations that include German, Romanian or other rare languages among Greek, Swedish, Danish, Finnish, Slavic languages, Arabic, Turkish and Chinese. In any case, there is a requirement of a thorough knowledge of at least 3 passive languages in order to be qualified for an assignment to the Italian booth of the European Parliament. The world's second largest employer of conference interpreters is the United Nations system. Each of its 4 main duty stations and 4 offices of the regional economic commissions, as well as each of 15 UN specialized agencies, has its own interpreting service. However, this organization is of rather little interest to Italian mother tongue interpreters, as Italian doesn't fall within the 6 official languages of the United Nations. Therefore, basically only bodies and structures located in Italy, such as FAO, activate an Italian booth. NATO, the Council of Europe and the Organization for European Cooperation and Development are the most demanding among the international employers, as their requirements include not only a postgraduate qualification in conference interpreting and several years of experience in the international arena, but also bilingualism, that is, English and French have to be the interpreter's A languages. Over the last 2 years, the international organizations have addressed 2 main problems: the continuing shortage of qualified language professionals at the global market and the urgency to replace retiring language staff. Following the historic development of the interpreting services, the vast majority of staff interpreters within the international organizations were recruited in the 70s. Therefore, it is foreseen that in the next 10 years, a large number of experienced interpreters will retire, owing to mandatory retirement policies and limitations on the employment of retirees. For instance, the Department for General Assembly and Conference Management of the United Nations confirms that the current vacancy rate for conference interpreters at the 4 UN duty stations at New York, Geneva, Nairobi and Vienna stands at 14.2%. Taking into consideration projected retirements of interpreters for the period 2012-2016, total turnover will reach 41.3%. Therefore, the language examinations will have to produce 119 new recruits. The employment situation is rather acute, as candidates aspiring to the interpreter positions can be recruited only through highly competitive examinations. This is another cause of the difficulties faced by all international organizations in filling language posts. The last assessment of educational institutions has evidenced the declining interest in foreign language study in many countries and deterioration of proficiency in the mother tongue all over the world. The combined effect of these factors is reflected in lower success rates in the latest admission examinations within international organizations. If, on the one hand, international bodies are competing for the qualified language staff, on the other hand, their policies are moving towards cutting back the number of staffers and recruiting more freelancers. In the light of the latest budget cuts, staff reduction means saving on the health insurance and pension. It appears against the background of the slight but steady growth in demand for interpreting services owing to globalization and expanded contact between stakeholders using different languages. The language industry generally seemed to be less affected by the financial crisis than other sectors. In fact, it has the highest growth rate of all industries in Europe, that is equivalent to 10% per year. Thus, the quick post-crisis recovery and the respective increase in the employment potential of conference interpreters are forecast. The demand for interpreting services is growing, but only for candidates who can offer an added value. To have a perfect command of languages and excellent interpreting skills is not sufficient anymore. Today, employers prefer those who are specialized in some subject, thus a qualification in medicine, engineering or law might be an advantage. Also, candidates in possess of a rare language combination, or those who are able to work with it in retour, have good chances of employment. Summing up, the job market within the international organizations is becoming more and more difficult to approach, while this profession is already complex and sophisticated itself.